Hello, I'm Salma Aleem, and I'm with.
Dan Cohen, it's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Mr. Cohens. So today we're interviewing Mr. Cohens on his position as a injury defense attorney. So let's start this off. Why were you a good candidate for this work position?
Well, it's a strange story. I actually was not certain that I was going to become an injury defense attorney, but upon graduating law school, I found myself in a position to take a job as an injury defense attorney, and specifically I handle workers' comp defense, which is specifically representing employers and their insurance company when there's a dispute regarding whether one of their employees has had an injury or to the extent that injured worker feels like he's entitled to certain benefits. And for me, it was a natural fit because I like the fact that things move rather quickly compared to other civil law matters where things can be tied up into court for 2 to 4 years, whereas in a workers' comp case, most of these cases are open and closed within 6 to 9 months. And I felt like it was a good fit for my personality.
Awesome. So where do you see yourself in 10 years?
So that's another good question. I've been doing this for over 30 years, so at the 10-year mark, I actually am hoping to be close to retirement, if not already retired. I feel like I've had a very long and productive career, and I've enjoyed it very much. But if you're asking me to be specifically honest with you right now, in 10 years, I hope to be retired.
So how long have you been in this position for?
Over 30 years now.
Awesome.
Right. I graduated law school in 1992 from Emory School of Law.
Loyalty. All right. Would you say this is like your passion, like this career?
It started out that way, but as with many careers, we come to find out that it's not always what you think it is, because what you see and what you believe it to be, once you get into the working world, is much different.
Yeah.
So while I would say maybe performing the defense of workers' comp claims is not my passion, I do feel like working hard is my passion.
Yeah.
And to that extent, I feel like it helps me serve my clients very well.
Awesome. All right. So what did you do as a student to prepare yourself for this career?
I studied a lot. I had to be disciplined. I had to be very well organized. I had to learn how to do a lot of multitasking, handle many responsibilities at one time. In any given month, I'm probably handling well over 100 cases. And so you don't exactly get to spend 1 to 2 weeks on just one single project. You have to be able to handle multiple projects at once. And so being involved in school with many activities, learning how to adjust my schedule for studies with extracurricular activities, it prepared me well for that.
Okay. So what further education or training would I need to achieve the career that you got?
Well, after graduating high school, you would then need to go on to college and complete a 4-year degree. And then if law was something you wanted to pursue, you would then take the law school admissions test, which is called the LSAT for short.
The bar exam?
No, the bar exam is what you do after law school.
Oh.
But the law school admissions test is, it's sort of like when you took the SAT to help you decide what college you were going to go to. In addition to your GPA in school, there's a law school admissions test that they use as well to decide whether they want to admit you into law school. And then law school takes 3 years. And then once you graduate law school and get your degree, then you take the bar exam, which allows you to secure a license to practice law in whatever state you're trying to get a license to practice.
So I heard the bar exam was like really hard. Did you pass it first try?
I was fortunate. I did pass it first try.
Oh, wow.
The school I graduated from, Emory Law School, has a very high passing rate.
Oh.
And a lot of the schools in Georgia have that as well. The University of Georgia is an excellent law school as well. Georgia State's a very good law school. They all have very high passing rates.
Yeah.
But I had to take another bar review class for several months to get ready for that test. I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, it was a 2-day test. It might be 3, but
test?
It take 2 days, yes.
Like 2 days straight, or like what?
Yes. So the first day was spent doing a multi-state questionnaire, and then the second day was spent just answering essay questions. Okay. And you have to pass both of them, have passing grades on both sets of the exam before you pass the bar. But in some states, such as California and New York, at least this was the case back in the early 90s, but it's probably the case now. Those bar exams lasted 3 days. Georgia's exam only lasted 2, so I got lucky.
Yeah, you did get lucky. What characteristics will make a person successful in your field?
Wow, good question. Actually, I think the characteristics that would make someone successful in the field of law probably transcend most professions, and that is the willingness to work hard, the willingness to learn, and the ability to organize your thoughts well. There's a lot going on once you reach the working world, not just in law, and rather than feeling like once you've graduated college and gotten your postgraduate degree, and then you get that first job and you're all excited, a lot of times there's the mentality that you have finally arrived, and there's a tendency to, I guess, take your foot off the gas and how hard you want to work, when in fact all you've been doing up until the point you've been hired is getting ready. So you've only just begun once you start that first job. And then from there, you got to figure out how to work even harder than what got you there in the first place. And if you've got a good work ethic and you've got a natural ability and you've got the willingness to continue to learn, because you never stop learning, even after doing this for over 30 years, I'm still learning. As long as you have an open mind to continue learning, then I think it gives you the fundamentals you need to excel.
Yeah, that's true for a lot of careers. How many years should I expect to take to complete my goal to become a criminal or injury defense attorney?
Well, you'll need to complete a 4-year degree in college, whether that takes you 4 years or more. Once you graduate from college, then you go on to law school. There will be 3 years of law school, and then you pass the bar, and then you either you apply for work at various law firms that you think are interested in hiring you, and you get a job offer and you begin the job. So it's probably a 7 to 8 year process in most people's cases once you start college.
Once you start college, so
Right.
like after, okay. Now, so did you participate in a job shadowing experience, or do you know if your company provides that?
I run a very small law firm, so we don't provide that.
So that's like an internship though, right?
It is, right.
Okay.
So there's a lot of law firms in the Atlanta area and all across the country where you can get summer internships, and that's a shadowing process.
Mm-hmm.
I did do that when I was in law school, and sometimes those internships can lead to offers of permanent employment, and then you decide whether you want to accept it versus try going to a different firm, or the summer internship may reveal to you that you are learning about an area of law that doesn't interest you, and so you have to apply for work at a law firm where the area of law they practice does interest you. And so there's a lot of learning going on, and sometimes you make decisions by default, and sometimes the decisions are made for you.
Okay, so if you were to redo your career path, what would you do differently?
Wow, that is a hard question. What would I do differently? That's a really, really, really hard question. What would I do different? I don't know if I would be an injury defense attorney, to be honest. The nature of my job has evolved quite a bit in the 30 years that I've been doing this, and there are a lot more tasks to be performed on a daily basis. There seems to be misconceptions and ineffectiveness in the insurance industry, and that's contributed by what happens on the other side when somebody who is injured or wants to think they're injured retains an attorney. And it has become quite complicated, and it's become such that you always wonder if the grass is greener somewhere else. So sometimes I take a moment to wonder would I have gone into like marketing or advertising, for instance. And that usually coincides with when you've had a bad week. But you have to understand there's going to be bad weeks no matter what industry you get into. But I've been fortunate. I've done my job well over the last 30 years. I've met some incredible people on both sides, those who practice defense work like me and those who represent the injured person. That's one of the things that's kept me going is, by and large, the attorneys you run up against or the in my experience at least, they're pretty good people to work with, and as long as they understand what each side is having to do, you never begrudge somebody for doing their job, even if it results in you having to work even harder.
Yeah.
Because if you weren't prepared to work hard, then you shouldn't have gotten into this line of work in the first place.
So if you were, describe a difficult situation that you have faced in your job and how you handled it.
Wow, a difficult situation. So there are times I come across representing my clients, and my cases come from the insurance company, and at that point in time, the case has already been going on for some period of time, and when they turn their file materials over to me, and I see that the client has done something wrong, and nobody's perfect, you face a difficult situation on how you are going to react to that. Do you pretend as if they've done nothing wrong and continue on the course that they've set? Do you risk calling them out and letting them know what they've done wrong, and that potentially jeopardizes your position, and then in turn might jeopardize their job security because they've got a boss who's looking over their shoulder? And typically what happens is you find a sense of communication where you can accomplish everything, and in turn they have more confidence and loyalty towards you because of how you've handled the situation. And usually it's difficult for a situation to ever be at a position where you can never change course. There are times where at the point you choose to change course, you find yourself behind the proverbial 8-ball. But it is possible, and usually the case, that you can regroup and redirect the case in a manner that the mistake being made would not be fatal to the defense you're trying to raise.
Yeah. And what ideas do you have for projects that could be better, or that could better help me learn more about your career?
Well, trying to get an internship at a law firm would be a great place to start. What else? Going to court. Court is a public forum. They're never private. So if you have the opportunity and the wherewithal, go to any county courthouse and go to a superior court or a state court, and just sit in on a court and watch how the process unfolds itself. You may be there to watch a jury selection. You may actually get to watch an actual trial, whether that trial involves a criminal matter or a civil matter, such as a car accident, or maybe you'll find a domestic dispute taking place and it's a divorce case. In the field of law that I practice, workers' compensation defense, it's a purely administrative agency. So I try the cases in front of what's called an administrative law judge. But again, those are also public. So you can go into a courthouse, spend the day sitting in on it, and decide if how these attorneys are working with one another or against one another, and the areas of law that are coming up for dispute that particular day seem to tickle your fancy and you want to continue to pursue it.
Would it be like hard? Like, how do I go to court? Like you said, you could just like volunteer to go.
No. There's actually no requirement to go to court.
They just send you I heard they like give you mail and they're like, you're invited to court or something.
That's a jury summons if you're going to be on a jury. But, it's the weekend. Monday morning, if you wanted to go to Fulton County Superior Court, you could drive down, pay for your parking, walk into the courthouse, and then open the doors to a courtroom and just sit in the audience.
What the heck?
Yes.
Is this like some undisclosed knowledge, or like
No.
do a lot of people know this?
No, well, I don't know if a lot of people know it, but there are no such things as a private court hearing. The ones that you might see on TV from time to time, or read about in the paper, if there's an awful lot of attention being given to it, they may have limitations on how many people can enter, and that's for safety protocols. Just like when you go to a restaurant or a movie theater, there's only so many people that they're allowed to fit inside the building. Yeah. The same thing will hold true in a court, but for the run-of-the-mill case or the run-of-the-mill day in court, you can walk into as many courtrooms as you want to see if they're holding court that day. Not every day is there going to be a court, or not every day does a judge hold court, but most days there will be a judge to hold court. So you just open up enough doors in the courthouse to find out where there's action going on.
So I have an interesting question. What was one of your most wild court or stories?
Most
or case.
wild court
Yeah.
cases. Wow. So I guess I was learning the ins and outs of being an injury defense attorney practicing workers' comp. And the senior partner of the firm I was working in also was representing a few injured individuals in motor vehicle accidents. And about 3 days before the trial started, he handed me the file and he said, "You're going to try this case and you're going to try to prove that my client is deserving of a jury verdict where they're going to get money." So everything that you see on TV starts filling your brain, and for 3 days you do nothing but focus on that one case. Contrary to what I said at the beginning of this interview, where I said you're having to juggle so many balls, when it comes time to actually go to court, you actually have no choice but to put everything aside and focus on that one case. And you select a jury, and you ask your witness questions, you cross-examine the other side, and then you wait for a jury verdict. And that was very, that was filled with quite a bit of anxiety. I won the case, fortunately, which was exciting. Did not get a whole lot of money in return, but that was probably because it wasn't worth a lot. But it still counted as a victory. But for that 1 week of getting ready and then trying the case, it was quite nerve-wracking. And that's when you come face to face with how to deal with nerves. And once you push through and deal with it, it gets easier every time after that.
Awesome. So, what is the most important thing you've learned from working in this career field?
Wow, the most important thing. Try to maintain your integrity. Work hard. Know what you're doing. If you've made a mistake, don't hide from it. And typically, whether it's a judge before whom you might have made a mistake or a superior, if you're willing to own up to it and you're demonstrating the ability to learn from it, you'll grow.
Would you say you've made, like earlier on in your career, you tended to make a lot of mistakes?
Yes. Did I make a lot of mistakes? I don't think so, but I made some bad ones in my first few years. Mistakes that I thought would lead to being fired, and in some businesses, it very well could have led to being fired, but I got lucky, and I was with a firm that showed a little more compassion, a little more understanding, and gave me the necessary room to make mistakes because they saw some promise in me. And now 30 years later, I feel like I fulfilled that promise.
Awesome. So, what are your strengths?
So I'd like to think my strengths are communication, and in reading my opponent's body language, even if that does not involve actually being in their presence, but just responding to emails or telephone calls. You do this long enough, you learn how to communicate with other people, and you also learn the art of negotiations. And it's very important to be able to realize each negotiation has its own unique aspects, and don't take for granted that what you've been able to accomplish in the past and in the manner in which you accomplished it applies to every single case that you're handling. And then eventually you take that information, you learn how to communicate with your client, because one of the things you want to do is also make your client feel like you've done them a service. The first half of my career, I feel like I spent it primarily learning how to practice law. The second half of my career, I learned how to run a business, and realizing that my business is service-oriented. All the while, you can't forget how you want to practice law, but there's always some extra step that you can build on and develop from. And so ultimately the goal is to resolve a claim to your client's satisfaction. And by being able to communicate with them, being able to be prompt, being upfront, and being confident serves you well in that area. And the best way to be confident in the work you're doing is know what you're doing. I have found that when I'm dealing with anybody who doesn't know what they're doing, they lack confidence, and then they talk in circles and develop word salad. So my advice to you is continue to keep learning whatever it is you pursue. Develop the confidence. Develop confidence to know that if you don't know everything, that it's okay. Eventually, you will know more than you did the day before, and if you get around some good people, they'll provide you with the environment where you can accomplish all of that.
Yeah. You might not hear this question a lot, but what are your weaknesses?
Wow, what are my weaknesses? I haven't thought about that question in a really, really long time. So I think my greatest weakness is talking too quickly. I've had a bad habit of doing that for over 30 years. It's just who I am, but talking quickly translates into many times making your audience feel unsettled. Mm-hmm. I have one vivid memory of this attorney when I was just starting out in the 1990s, and he'd been doing this for 20 years. And he was a country attorney from Rome, Georgia, who spoke slower than anybody I'd ever come across. And there were times where when he would talk, I wanted to reach across his desk and wring his neck. But he was a very interesting gentleman. And then we ended up finding ourselves in court together, not on the same case, in which you argued in appeal. And so in workers' compensation, if you're dissatisfied with the decision, you have the right to appeal, and then you present your what's called oral argument before a panel of judges. And here he was talking before this panel of judges, and he was talking as slow as you possibly could. But after about 30 or 45 seconds, it dawned on me that one of his strengths was talking so slowly, because you're literally sitting on the edge of your seat listening to every word. And it was like having a food that you thought you disliked and suddenly it's one of your favorites, where it dawned on me that you don't always say more by talking quickly. Sometimes saying less, but saying your words effectively is the best way to get your point across.
Wow. So how would you describe your work style?
So I find myself working many days at a frenetic pace. I don't find myself doing, it's like a sprint every single day for me, feeling like I need to accomplish many things, whether that is responding to emails, whether that's my client who is emailing me or another attorney about a case, whether that is reviewing the new information I get when a file is referred to me to request my assistance in representing the client and trying to understand what the facts are and how to apply that. And then at any given stage in the claim, having to provide your clients with updates, whether that means evaluating the case for maybe considering settlement, or to let them know what the strength of your case is as you prepare to go to court. I feel like I've got the ability to juggle those balls well and to accomplish quite a number of things in any given day. And that comes with your organization and your work ethic.
Yeah.
And from being able to talk fast, so I think I type fast too.
I can't type fast. Tell me about your proudest achievement. You told me about your worst work or one of the most wild work experiences,
Right.
But now I want to know your greatest achievement.
Wow, my greatest achievement. I don't think there's one moment that stands alone. When my clients show me their appreciation for a job well done, that's like always getting like a birthday cake with a great icing on it. To being told, you're great, what would I do without you? It validates the hard work that you put forth, and it makes you feel really good about what you've been doing with your career, and that's extremely gratifying. But in terms of, one shining moment, sometimes your most shining moments are the ones that the clients don't even appreciate. If you settle a case that is a losing case, if it ends up going to court, but the client doesn't appreciate it, but you've done your client a great service, sometimes that's the greatest feeling at all, because the one thing you don't want to do is have to go to court and embarrass yourself, which fortunately has happened very, very infrequently. But there comes a time where you represent a company who doesn't understand the law and feels like the law is against them, and it's up to you to try to explain the outcomes that are possible and what you believe to be the best outcome. And I will be honest with you, not every time will that result in the client being 100% on board with what you are trying to do. And a function of that is simply not having the experience of going through this process in the past with them. But having done this so many times, it's easier to see what is a better outcome than other outcomes. And when you can achieve those, that's a good feeling as well.
Yeah. So, how would you recommend being a criminal, or, oh my God, not a criminal, I keep thinking about criminal defense attorney. How would you recommend being a injury defense attorney as a good career?
Well, I mean...
Or would you recommend
being an injury defense
attorney?
It's hard to say. I'm not practicing constitutional law, so I'm not changing the world in that regard.
Yeah.
I'm not practicing criminal defense law, so it's not like I'm personally involved with somebody's liberties being at stake. But in the areas of injury defense, I mean, it is important. It does revolve around a very big facet of our society, and there have been some good things that come from that. But in terms of... What was the question again? I'm sorry. I started talking in circles and I forgot what the question was.
One of your biggest weaknesses just came into play.
Oh, yes.
Would you recommend being an injury defense attorney as a good career?
Well, whether it's injury law or any other area of law, if you've got a desire to learn the law, be able to feel like you're working with a puzzle in terms of how the facts apply to the law, and wondering how you can be persuasive in trying to establish that your facts should be interpreted in a particular way where sometimes you come out victorious, I think it's a good career.
Yeah. That's why I'm pursuing it. What opportunities for advancement are available in your area of expertise?
What opportunities for advancement? Well, once you get your degree from law school and you pass the bar, there's really only a few career paths to take so long as you're staying within that. Mm-hmm. You go with a law firm, you get the experience that you want. Rarely, but sometimes it happens, you find that your efforts are rewarded appropriately enough that you don't want to go to another firm. But the reality is most people change their career, or that not necessarily their career from injury law to another area of law, but will change employers rather, quite a number of times. And that's a function of trying to figure out what your worth is, who values what you do, and whose style of practicing law and how they run a business fits with you.
Yeah. Do you think AI is changing, since you've been in this career path for like about 30 years, do you think AI has changed anything about it or is taken away from it?
It's beginning to. It's definitely beginning to. The last 2 or 3 years, AI, in my opinion, can be helpful, but it has resulted in a lot of those who claim they've been hurt on the job not feeling like they need an attorney, and in that respect, they're representing themselves. And there's an old saying that has been going on, I think, since the beginning of law: "He who has himself for a client is a fool." And so these people who are trying to act as if they know how to practice law through what they've learned through AI, and believe me, AI has provided them enough assistance, so it looks pretty what they're doing, but when you read the content of what they're trying to present, there's a lot of word salad going on. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I guess, it's not artistic beauty, but the innate desire to understand and gain the knowledge of law has been lost.
Yeah.
The more AI is being used. It's more a function of being a robot and punching certain keystrokes, and doing Google searches to get information. And some of that information can be useful, but
taking away the beauty of humanity.
Well, much the same way that when you go to the doctor's office, you've done 10 minutes of research on certain symptoms, and you try to tell your doctor you think you know what you've got, where you've got a doctor who went through college, who went through med school, who's been practicing medicine for all these years, and has a differing diagnosis, and you're trying to tell them after researching for 10 minutes or an hour that, are you sure you're right about this, doctor?
Yeah.
It's the same way in law.
Yeah.
Every so often, you may be right, but more often than not, you're way out of your element.
I have one interesting question. Yeah, this is the last question. One interesting question. You said you mentioned a phrase. You're like, he who has himself as a client is a fool. But if you were ever in a position where you needed an attorney for this exact reason, like you needed an injury defense attorney, would you hire anyone, or would you just trust in yourself since you are
right?
An attorney?
Even with me as an attorney, I would absolutely hire somebody, because too often emotions get in the way of your better judgment, and that's one of the things you hire an attorney to do.
Yeah.
Handle your case without emotion.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. It was so nice meeting you. Thank you. This interview gave me a lot of profound knowledge, and I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.